In the highlands of East Africa, more than 1,000 years ago, stood one of the greatest empires the world has ever known. A kingdom of trade, a kingdom of stone, a kingdom of faith. This was the kingdom of Axum, a civilization that once stood shoulder to shoulder with Rome, Persia, and China. A power that rose from the mountains of Ethiopia, carved monuments taller than the obelisks of Egypt, and carried Christianity deep into Africa, centuries before Europe fully embraced it. And yet today, its name is barely remembered, its story almost forgotten. From the 1st century to the 7th century, Axum controlled the crossroads of the ancient world. Its wealth flowed from commerce, ivory from the African interior, gold from its mines, frankincense and myrrh from Arabia, and exotic animals unlike anything the Mediterranean had ever seen. All of it passed through its great port at Adulis, carried by merchants to the markets of Rome, Byzantium, Persia, and India. Aksumite kings minted coins in gold and silver, stamped with royal images. A declaration of power, a signal that Axum was not a hidden kingdom. It was a global empire. But Axum's greatness was not measured in wealth alone. Its rulers built monuments that defied imagination. Stelae, carved from single blocks of granite, some rising more than 30 meters into the air. They stood as eternal markers of royal tombs, symbols of prestige and divine authority. And in the 4th century, under King Ezana, Axum became one of the very first great powers in history to declare Christianity its official religion. Long before most of Europe, Axum carried the cross as the symbol of its kings and its empire. Yet Axum's story is not one of peace alone. It was a kingdom of conquest and conflict. Its armies marched across the Red Sea into Arabia. Its kings clashed with rival powers over trade and faith. And when Islam rose in the 7th century, Axum faced a world that had suddenly changed. Trade shifted away from the Red Sea. Climate and environment turned against it. By the 10th century, the empire that had once rivaled Rome and Persia had collapsed into obscurity. But though Axum fell, it did not disappear. Its faith endured, carried by the Ethiopian church. Its language, Ge'ez, survived in scriptures still read today, and its legacy inspired generations, from the medieval rock-hewn churches of Lalibela to modern Ethiopia's national pride. Axum was more than a kingdom. It was a bridge between Africa and the wider world, between the old gods and Christianity, between memory and eternity. To understand Axum, we must go back to its beginnings. Long before its kings minted coins, long before its obelisks pierced the sky, there were earlier kingdoms in this land, kingdoms that laid the foundations for what would become one of Africa's greatest empires. The land of Axum was blessed by geography. Its heart lay in the Ethiopian and Eritrean highlands, a plateau of fertile soils fed by seasonal rains. This land could grow crops, support livestock, and sustain cities. But more than its mountains, Axum's true strength was its proximity to the Red Sea. Through this narrow sea ran one of the most important trade routes of the ancient world. From the Indian Ocean, goods flowed north toward Egypt and the Mediterranean. From Africa, gold and ivory traveled east. Whoever controlled the Red Sea controlled the crossroads between continents. And it was here that Axum would rise. Long before Axum, there was the kingdom of D'mt, an early polity that thrived around the 10th to 5th centuries BCE. Its capital was at Yeha, where the ruins of a great temple still stand, built of massive stone blocks without mortar. The temple was dedicated to the god Almaka, a moon deity worshipped in southern Arabia. This reveals a truth. From the very beginning, the Horn of Africa was connected to the Arabian world across the Red Sea. South Arabian settlers brought with them their script, their architecture, their religion, and the peoples of the Ethiopian highlands fused these influences with their own traditions. D'mt declined by the 5th century BCE, but it planted seeds. Trade, writing, and monumental building would continue, and centuries later, these traditions would flourish in Axum. By the 1st century CE, Axum had emerged as a distinct kingdom. Its capital lay at Axum, in the highlands of modern northern Ethiopia. From here, its kings controlled surrounding lands, expanded toward the coast, and seized control of the vital port of Adulis. Greek and Roman writers first mention Axum in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a 1st century merchant's guidebook. They describe a powerful king who commanded trade in ivory, rhino horn, and slaves. This was the birth of the Axumite Empire. From the very start, Axum was outward-looking. Its merchants sailed to Egypt and the Mediterranean, carrying ivory for Roman elites. They traded with India, exchanging African goods for spices, silk, and cotton. They dealt with Arabia, securing frankincense and myrrh, the sacred resins of the ancient world. Axum's rulers understood. Power came not just from armies, but from commerce, and by controlling Adulis, they sat at the gateway of empires. As Axum grew, its rulers built monuments to project their might. The first stelae fields were created, massive granite obelisks, carved with intricate designs to resemble tall buildings. These were not mere markers of death. They were symbols of authority, linking kings to the divine. Soon, Axumite kings began striking coins, the only sub-Saharan African kingdom of its time to do so. Their gold and silver coins carried Greek inscriptions, ensuring they were recognized in foreign markets. This was Axum's message to the world. We are here, we are powerful, we are equal to Rome, Persia, and India. From its fertile highlands, its port at Adulis, and its monuments of stone, Axum was ready to rise. The world would soon know the names of its kings, and under their rule, Axum would become one of the greatest powers of its age. By the 1st centuries of the Common Era, Axum was no longer just a kingdom in the highlands. It was a power rising. Its fertile lands provided grain, cattle, and honey. Its mountains gave stone for monuments. Its rivers fed trade. And through the port of Adulis, Axum's wealth poured outward: ivory, gold, frankincense, animal skins, and slaves. Merchants came from across the seas to buy Axum's goods. Greek sailors, Roman officials, Persian traders, Indian merchants. All passed through Adulis, and in return Axum received glassware, silk, wine, and spices. It was a network that connected Africa to the ancient world. Adulis was more than a port. It was the lifeline of an empire. Located on the Red Sea, it gave Axum access to the Indian Ocean world. Roman and Greek writers described it as a bustling marketplace where ships from India and Arabia docked alongside African traders. Ivory tusks were stacked high. Exotic animals, giraffes, lions, elephants, were loaded into cages, bound for Rome's arenas. And Adulis was guarded fiercely. To control it meant wealth. To lose it meant ruin. Every king of Axum knew this truth. The rulers of Axum claimed divine favor. They built enormous stelae, granite obelisks that towered over the land. Each one was a proclamation that the king was powerful in life and eternal in death. Some stelae were carved to resemble multi-story palaces, complete with windows and doors, as if the stone itself was transformed into a royal mansion. And these monuments were not built by chance. They were statements to subjects and to rivals. Here stands a king who rules not only men, but time itself. One of Axum's greatest innovations was the minting of coins. Beginning in the 3rd century, Axum's kings struck coins of bronze, silver, and gold. On one side, the king's face, crowned, commanding, gazing forward. On the other, symbols of power, wheat stalks for fertility, or later, the Christian cross. The inscriptions were in Greek, the language of Mediterranean trade. This ensured that Axum's money could circulate across borders, recognized and trusted by foreign merchants. No other African kingdom of the time minted coins on such a scale. It was a bold declaration. Axum was not isolated. It was part of the world's economic system. Aksum did not exist in obscurity. Writers from Rome, Greece, and Byzantium recorded its presence. The 4th century Roman official Ammianus Marcellinus listed Aksum as one of the world's great powers, alongside Persia, China, and Rome. For the Romans, Aksum was their African ally in the Red Sea, a counterbalance to Persian influence. For Persians, Aksum was both partner and rival, competing for control of Arabia. For India, Axum was a steady trade partner, exchanging African ivory for Indian spices and textiles. The world knew Axum, and Axum knew the world. As wealth flowed, Axum expanded. Its armies marched into neighboring lands, into Nubia to the west, into the lowlands of Sudan, and across the Red Sea into Arabia. Axumite soldiers carried spears and shields, sometimes supported by elephants. Their campaigns secured trade routes, ensured loyalty from rivals, and brought tribute back to Axum. But conquest was not only about war, it was about reputation. By demonstrating strength abroad, Axum's kings strengthened their rule at home. Before Christianity, Axumite kings followed traditional beliefs inherited from their ancestors and from contacts with South Arabia. Gods like Almaka, associated with the moon, were worshipped in stone temples. Ritual sacrifices were held to ensure fertility and victory in war. Inscriptions in Sabaean and Gayas record these early beliefs, blending African and Arabian traditions. But change was coming. Through trade and diplomacy, new religions began to reach Axum, Judaism and Christianity, and one king in particular would alter Axum's destiny forever. Axum had risen from a small highland kingdom to a global trading empire. Its stelae pierced the skies, its coins carried power across seas, and its armies secured its place among the mighty. But its greatest chapter was still ahead. Under a young king named Ezana, Axum would not only grow in power, but in faith. And in doing so, it would leave a mark on history that endures to this day. In the early 4th century, a boy ascended Axum's throne. His name was Ezana. Ezana inherited not only a kingdom of wealth, but also a crossroads of faith. Jewish communities lived in the land. Merchants brought stories of Christ from Egypt and Syria, and missionaries whispered of a new way, a faith that promised eternal salvation beyond the power of kings. Christianity arrived in Axum not by conquest but by encounter. According to tradition, 2 young Syrian Christians, Frumentius and Aedesius, were shipwrecked on the Red Sea coast. Brought to the royal court, they earned the trust of the king. When the old king died, Frumentius became tutor to the young Ezana. Through him, Ezana's heart turned toward the new faith. In time, Frumentius traveled to Alexandria, where the patriarch of the church ordained him as bishop of Axum. Returning, he baptized Ezana, and with him, a kingdom. Ezana became the first Christian monarch of Africa south of the Sahara. He ordered churches to be built, prayers to be offered, and the cross to be struck on his coins. Where once the stelae had proclaimed royal eternity, now the cross proclaimed eternal life. Ezana also proclaimed his faith to the world. His inscriptions declared Axum to be a Christian kingdom, proud, independent, but in communion with the faith of Rome, Byzantium, and Egypt. It was a bold step. In a time when empires rose and fell by their gods, Axum staked its destiny on Christ. Christianity gave Axum not only a faith, but a diplomatic network. By embracing the same religion as Rome and Byzantium, Axum gained allies and prestige. Letters traveled between kings. Roman officials praised Ezana as a brother in Christ. Byzantine bishops recognized Axum as part of the great Christian world. But Axum was never a puppet. Its kings minted their own coins, wrote in their own script, Ge'ez, and built their own churches in local styles. Faith had come from abroad, but Axum made it its own. Ezana was not only a Christian king, he was also a conqueror. His armies marched west, defeating the kingdom of Meroe in Nubia. His inscriptions claim victory over neighboring peoples, ensuring Axum's supremacy in the region. But Ezana's ambitions reached further. Axumite fleets crossed the Red Sea into Arabia, seizing ports and influencing the kingdoms of Himyar and Saba. In doing so, Axum controlled both sides of the Red Sea, the lifeline of global trade. With Ezana's conversion came new architecture. The massive stelae ceased. Instead, churches rose. Some were simple, built of stone and timber. Others, carved from solid rock, hinted at the genius that centuries later would give the world Lalibela's rock-hewn churches. The language of worship was Ge'ez. Its hymns, its chants, its scriptures, still sung today in Ethiopia's ancient churches, were born in this age. By the 5th century, Axum was at its peak. Its ships carried goods to India and China. Its merchants bargained in Alexandria and Constantinople. Its kings commanded armies feared across the Red Sea, and its faith gave it legitimacy both at home and abroad. Rome had fallen to chaos. Persia and Byzantium fought endlessly. But in the Horn of Africa, Axum stood tall, prosperous, powerful, and pious. Christianity became more than a religion. It became Axum's identity. Monasteries arose in the mountains. Priests copied sacred texts into Ge'ez. Hymns echoed across the highlands. Even when political fortunes would later falter, the faith remained. It bound the people together, preserved their language, and gave them a link to their ancestors. This was Ezana's greatest legacy. Not conquest, not wealth, but a faith that endured. But golden ages do not last forever. New powers were rising. The deserts of Arabia stirred with a new faith, Islam. The seas shifted, trade routes moved, and Axum would soon face trials that no army or monument could prevent. The empire that had touched 3 continents would begin its slow decline. Yet in its faith, its culture, and its memory, Axum would never vanish. Every empire faces its twilight. For Axum, the warning signs began in the 6th century. The Red Sea, once Axum's highway of wealth, grew more dangerous. Rival kingdoms in Arabia challenged Axum's control. In time, the rise of Islam transformed the region. New Muslim states dominated the Red Sea and Indian Ocean trade. Adulis, the jewel of Axum's commerce, declined, and with it, Axum's power. In the 7th century, a new faith spread rapidly across Arabia, Islam. Mecca and Medina became centers of a spiritual revolution. As Muslim fleets sailed the seas, trade routes shifted away from Axum. Merchants who once sailed to Adulis now favored ports in Egypt, Arabia, and beyond. But history remembers one act of kindness. When Islam was still young, some of its first followers fled persecution in Mecca. They sought refuge across the Red Sea, in Axum. The Christian king, remembered as the Negus, gave them protection. For this, Islamic tradition honors Ethiopia as a land of justice, never to be attacked. It was a moment of peace in an age of change. As centuries passed, Aksum's power waned. Without control of trade, its wealth dwindled. Its armies, once feared, could no longer march across seas. By the 8th and 9th centuries, Axum retreated into its highlands. The great stelae fields grew silent. Adulis became a memory. Foreign writers ceased to mention Axum. To the outside world, it seemed to vanish. But Axum did not die. It transformed. The highlands became a fortress, protecting its faith and its people. Monasteries flourished in remote valleys. Priests copied scriptures in Ge'ez. The Christian identity, born under Ezana, endured. Though Axum the empire faded, Axum the faith lived on. It laid the foundations for the medieval Ethiopian kingdoms that followed. The legacy of Axum is vast. It gave the world one of the earliest Christian kingdoms. It created a written language, Ge'ez, still used in Ethiopia's churches today. It built monuments that defy time, from its stelae to its churches. And it forged a cultural identity that has endured for over 1,600 years. Even as other empires vanished, Axum's light never fully dimmed. It became Ethiopia, a nation that still remembers its ancient crown. In the ruins of Axum, the stones still whisper. They tell of kings who ruled the seas, of merchants who carried ivory and gold, of faith that endured beyond empire. The Aksumite Empire may have declined, but it never truly died. Its spirit lives on in Ethiopia's churches, in its language, and in its people. This was Axum, a kingdom of stone and faith, a bridge between Africa and the world, and one of the great civilizations of history. In Axum today, the stelae still rise from the earth. Some lean, some lie broken, others stand tall, silent witnesses to a kingdom that once ruled the seas. The wind whispers across them, carrying echoes of merchants, warriors, and priests. Empires rise, empires fall, but the stones remain. For centuries, Axum was counted among the world's great powers. Roman writers placed it beside Persia and China. Its ships reached India, its faith reached eternity. And yet, in much of world history, Axum is forgotten, overshadowed by Rome, by Egypt, by Europe's empires. But the story of Africa is not silence. The story of Axum is proof. Africa built civilizations as mighty, as enduring, as influential as any on earth. Axum's greatest gift was not its gold or its armies. It was its soul. The adoption of Christianity shaped not only Axum, but all of Ethiopia. Its chants in Ge'ez, its sacred manuscripts, its crosses of gold, still carried in worship today, are living testaments. From Ezana's time until now, Ethiopia has kept a flame lit, a flame that connects modern Africa to its ancient past. Axum was not isolated. It was a bridge between Africa and Arabia, between the Nile and the Indian Ocean, between the ancient world and the world to come. Through Axum, Africa spoke to Rome. Through Axum, Christianity found a home beyond the Mediterranean. Through Axum, the Red Sea became not a barrier, but a gateway. Axum teaches us that greatness is not only measured in conquest, it is measured in memory. Its stelae tell us of kings, its coins tell us of trade, its churches tell us of faith. Though its armies fell silent, its culture endured. And that endurance is itself a kind of victory. In the story of Axum, we see the story of Africa's genius. A kingdom that rose from the highlands, reached across seas, and left a legacy that time could not erase. When we walk among its ruins, when we hear the chants of Ge'ez, when we see the cross carried high in Ethiopia, we are walking in the footsteps of Axum. The Aksumite empire is gone, but its spirit lives on, in stone, in faith, in Africa.